Good afternoon, my name is Shamir Kali Griffin, and I'm here to discuss a very important sociological issue, or rather, an issue with social psychology. Today I'll be talking about how norms can become institutionalized within the society, and how them becoming institutionalized can lead to the creation of both outgroups and groups and ultimately scapegoating, while using the American government as an example, and the current issue of immigration. For references and just to make things clearer, I'll define a lot of the words I'll be using ahead of time right now. An outgroup is an outgroup is considered a group that is foreign than the one that you're currently listed in, although you're currently not aware of who is in that. Although you're currently not aware of the qualities of the outgroup, we do put qualities on them. For example, in this case, we're using immigrants as the outgroup, as we don't really know many immigrants personally, and that we're using a pretty much an umbrella term to describe them. The in group in this case will consider native, not so much Native Americans, but like native-born citizens that are in the U.S. The norms we'll be discussing are pretty much Social Security, most benefits that are allotted to people who are born in the United States of America. And the term scapegoating is pretty much when one group or a certain minority group is targeted in order to distract the main group from their own problems. In this case, the war on terror, the deficit or economic deficit, or social problems are currently going on within the country. For references, I've used the following books, which you may want to look up. The first book is Nature of Prejudice by Gordon W. Allport, where most of these terms have been taken from. The second book is Mexican Workers, American Dreams, a very useful book. And the last one is, or the next two are Brokered Boundaries and Intergroup Relations. Back to my discussion. With American nationals and natives being considered the in group, we have a sort of solidarity within ourselves, that we see ourselves as this one group and we look out for our own interests. We have nationalism. We consider this patriotism or a patriotic act. We do things to help support our country and to support each other, and we have certain rights and benefits as such, being healthcare, social security, police taking care of us, education system, and the opportunity to go to higher learning, such as with college. And sorry, I'm doing this live a bit so you can see me better. Because we have these certain freedoms, we believe that certain outgroups are undeserving of them, or that they have no rights. In this case, we're talking about the outgroups of immigrants. Currently we're using immigrants as scapegoats, saying that because of them, they're taking away jobs from deserving Americans, as well as using up welfare, social security, a lot of things that only Americans apparently should have access to, and that ultimately that's causing a downturn in our economy and is helping put us into a recession that we're currently in. However, these are just typical propaganda-like tactics that any outgroup will use in order to distract the majority of the group from anything that's going on, like looking at real reasons why we're in this problem, or why we're in this current situation, or how we can solve this problem. Anyway, I wanted to actually refer to this book, Brokered Boundaries, because in here it lists a pretty interesting facts about the practices that I'm currently talking about with the American government and immigrants. And this isn't the first time this has happened within America. If you look back in the 1920s, they had an act called the Repatriados, which means repatriation, and it's when they had a lot of Mexican immigrants, or any immigrants pretty much of Latin or Latino origin, sent. They were told that they could leave the country and they'd be able to come back at a later time, and they thought that by removing them and their a large amount of poverty or so forth from the area, it would ultimately improve the quality of life and stuff, and make jobs more available to native-born Americans. However, this was later found out and proven to be statistically wrong, and that the amount of money that was spent in order to remove the alleged illegal immigrants from the United States actually was more than the amount of money they would cost to have to let them stay here. This is pretty much the only reason why this was even done in the first place was because when it comes to competing for goods, or when it comes for lower bracket problems, like in this situation, most of the immigrants, or pretty much all the immigrants, were in a lower tier or a lower economic class, so they were competing for jobs with other lower class people. When during the Great Depression, there was also a lot of people unemployed, so everyone was looking for work. And when you have so many people combating for one resource, you have something that goes on that's known as the zero-sum effect, which is pretty much that there can only be one winner in the situation, so only one group can actually have the supplies, in this case jobs. This has been proven to be false, as jobs are constantly being created, and that we ultimately needed immigrants to help with farm work and many agricultural needs, which Alabama is currently discussing and having an issue over, which they also figured out that they also need the immigrants still too. Also, another issue that the government has used against immigrants isn't just the ones of Latino origin, although they're commonly discussed nowadays. There have been immigrants all over America. I mean, America was once considered a country of immigrants, but as the book aforementioned book I talked about earlier has said, up until the 1960s, European immigrants were also considered immigrants. They were discriminated against too. But due to something called recategorization, in which we break apart a separate category, like say we see some group as the out group, like immigrants in this case European immigrants, we break that category, and we succeed them into a new one, or one that belongs with ours. So because of that, they pretty much turned all European immigrants which came from primarily from Western and Northern Europe into what was considered white. And because they were considered white, it made their immigrant status and their ability to get jobs a lot easier than it was for Latino immigrants. And the fact that if this can be done with one, or with a large group, why can't this be done with another group of immigrants coming from like south of the border? This is pretty much a major issue involving class prejudice and also racial prejudice, which can lead to discrimination by the current in-group or ourselves. If you look at the government as a whole, you'll notice that there are many things that are wrong with it that lead to discrimination of any sort against any cultural group. And this isn't the first time this has happened with immigrants. I mean, this time we're using immigration as a scapegoat, but this has pretty much happened with almost every other race. But the only way to combat this is for the minority group to constantly be fighting over and over again, and to stay consistent with it. It's because of consistency with the minority group, such as like Latino immigrants in California, that they've been able to overturn many of the propositions during 1994, Proposition 187, I believe, and during 1996, 1998, and also in 2006, where there were riots and walkouts for immigration. Well, yeah, this is pretty much my main summary of, or my social psychological view of intergroup relations. Like I said, you'll want to check out these books, Intergroup Relations by Michael A. Hogg and Dominic Abrams. That's where I got all my reading and terminology from. Mexican Workers and American Dreams by Camille Gurin Gonzalez. This had a lot of facts about the Great Depression and about immigrant status and competition for jobs. And also the Repatriation Act, it was issued, which was later followed by the Bracero program, which brought in more immigrants to the country, which wouldn't make sense because if the immigrants were such a problem, why are they bringing them back? And Brokered Boundaries by Douglas S. Massey and Magli Sanchez, which pretty much has like modern views of what's going on in the Americas, or in the United States with immigrants as it is, and how pretty much the out group wants how our society as a whole, which is the in group, wants the out group, which is the immigrants, to assimilate to our culture only and follow only our certain means and our norms. and they can't follow our norms, and they're considered not American, and they consider that they are undeserving of the benefits that we should offer them. That's all for the video. I think I've overdone my time. Have a good day. Bye.